I recall I had tried to asphyxiate myself when I was probably about 7, and I'd done it in a classroom.
Hi guys, I'm Sahar and I'm an assistant psychologist.
Hi, Zahra. Nice to meet you. Hi, everybody. I'm Anissa Marie, and I'm a singer-songwriter.
Hey everybody, I am Jessica and I'm a junior doctor.
Hi guys, I'm Zainab and I'm an underwriter for a car leasing company.
Hi guys, I'm Gigi and I'm a producer.
All right guys, so the first question is, when did you first notice you had a mental health issue?
I think for me it was 2020, so like all throughout my life I've always suffered with like my moods going up and down, but I would always blame it on something. I would blame it on like my periods, or I would blame it on something going on in my life. But then I realised in 2020, like, nah, this isn't normal. Yeah.
Mine was when I was 19, I'm 26 now. I just felt different one day, so I just woke up and just kind of like, just didn't want to be in the world. Like, it sounds crazy, but yeah, just everything changed from then.
I think mine was at the back of like 2019 going into 2020. I was in like a abusive relationship. So that kind of like triggered everything. Like it kind of all stemmed from there. I think before initially I kind of had some sort of like aspect of like anxiety, but I think that really like triggered everything for me.
I would say that I recognised that I had mental health, or actually identified that I had mental health in 2015. But then as I have gone on my journey, I've realised I probably had mental health since I was like 5-ish, because of circumstances. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely can relate to that because I definitely don't identify when I felt it, but you look back at memories and you're like, actually, I was experiencing it then, I was experiencing that anxiety. But yeah, no, I don't notice until I was like 13 and obviously 23 now. When do you guys first think that obviously you guys may have been experiencing mental health?
I think one of the first moments that I can remember, I recall I had tried to asphyxiate myself when I was probably about 7, and I'd done it in a classroom. And I don't think I even like consciously remembered that I had done that until I started going to therapy, and I was like, oh, this has been present for a long time. But again, because of circumstances, it kind of had drove me to wanting to do that to myself, so.
I feel like I can't really pinpoint when I would have like discovered it. I feel like throughout like my teenage years, I feel like everyone's kind of had like moments where they feel like, oh, do you know what? Like I feel a bit anxious, but you don't really like think about it back then. You just think, oh, do you know what? I'm a bit nervous. Like I'm a bit nervous to do this, I'm a bit nervous to do that. I think as I've gotten older and I've learnt more about it, and then you come across like a certain experience or an event, or you go through like a traumatic experience, you start to learn about it more, and you kind of think about what sorts of things happened maybe in the past that you think, oh, do you know what? I felt like this before, and it's like brought back like a few emotions and feelings, and you're like, wow, do you know what? That actually happened a few years ago, but it's all been brought up now just because of this one thing that's happened.
Yeah, I think something triggers it. So I think you kind of, like, with the work that I do with my therapist and stuff, they think it was a lot to do with childhood. But something when I was 19 kind of triggered it. So they think it was likely that I had it when I was younger, but I just wasn't able to recognize it because I was being so adult, when that plays a big role in how you take things and how you work things with your brain. So, yeah.
Again, I think a lot of it was just kind of there in childhood. So I remember one time, I think my parents left me in an aisle. So I was like 6 and I was in an aisle in the shops just waiting for my parents to come back. They were like, you know, we'll be back in like 5 minutes. And I just started panicking. Like, I would just cry within like 2 minutes, and I'd be like, what's going on? Why am I overreacting? And then they'd be back in 5 minutes, but I was like, oh my God, they left me, they're not coming back, or how am I gonna get home? So little did I know, obviously, that feeling was actually anxiety, and that had a name.
Oh, boy. At your worst, how did you feel?
like a ton of bricks falling on me. No, that's how I describe it to other people. You really can't explain it. And like, you can't understand unless you've experienced it. And I feel like at your worst in depression, anxiety, or whatever mental health issue you have, it's different. So in my depression, it literally feels like a ton of bricks is on me. Like, I can't move. I'll be in bed. Like, I stayed in bed for literally like months. And anxiety, obviously panic attacks, that's a different feeling. It's like I'm having, like right now from this situation, like shaking kind of thing. Just because it's just anything that is new can be so like anxious, provoking, so yeah.
At my worst, I was definitely suicidal, and I was self-harming as well, with all manners of different things and ways. And I would feel like it would start as a physical experience. So I would feel like this throbbing inside my body, and it would like kind of ruminate and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that feeling would kind of like transfer to my thoughts. And the thoughts, when they start to catastrophize and you start thinking, you know, okay, this particular situation's happened, this person doesn't love me, I'm going to be like this in the same situation for the rest of my life. You start to have that, you know, and with that thought and the feeling and all of it, it just becomes like a full body experience where I feel like I can't breathe or I can't move. And before, I used to I would try and even sit on my hands so I wouldn't do anything to myself. Or I would maybe try and go and do something physical. But when that, like, especially during lockdown, when you couldn't go anywhere, it was a very dark feeling.
What is the hardest thing about having a mental health issue?
So I had been in a relationship and it turned abusive. It started off with like emotional, mental abuse, and then people kind of sit there and say it's going to turn physical, and you kind of sit there and defend the situation because you're like, no, like that person wouldn't do that to me, and then it does. And I think I always kind of had anxiety, but you can't be going on like Google and like self-diagnosing. Like, you kind of got to sit there and think, do you know what? Something's going on here and something's not right. And I've always been quite like a confident, outgoing person, and I became the complete opposite. I became like really reserved. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I felt really awkward around people. And there was a problem, but I couldn't talk about it to anyone because I was so like scared of what people were going to think.
What did you think they were going to say or think?
I thought people weren't going to really understand my situation, because even throughout when I was going through it, it's so easy for people to say, block them, just leave, that's it. But I feel like I've had to say this so many times, up until you're in that situation, you're in an abusive relationship, it's not as easy as blocking someone and walking away. You go through these experiences and it's so hard to like explain it to someone else because realistically, they're not going to get it. Everyone's trauma is different. Everyone's experience is so different. My trauma might be so bad to me, but you might think it's just, I just grazed my knee. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't explain your level of trauma to different people. Well, you can sit there and explain it and people can try to understand you, but I feel like only you can really understand yourself.
I think following on from what you've just said, you're dealing with the mind. And if your mind has done something for 22 years or for 27 years or for however long it's been, you're conditioned. You've conditioned yourself, or the environment around you has conditioned you to be like that. The circumstances have conditioned you to be that way. And then when you come into understanding that thing, that in that self and in identifying it is a bit of a culture shock in itself, because it's like, oh my God, who am I? Like, what's going on? And then having to relearn that is one of the hardest things you will ever do in your life.
In terms of the culture thing and how you talk about with family, because the culture that we come from, like black and brown, there's so much denial themselves, so they project onto you that if I've had to go through this and I never complained or I never did this, then I expect you to do the same and more. And then it's just everybody's brushing things under the carpet, and then they get mad at you if you take things out under the carpet.
We come from a culture that, you know, covers up rape and sexual abuse and domestic violence, and It's like, these things happen to you, grandma and grandpa, mum,
Yeah.
dad, X, Y, and Z. Why have we not spoken and discussed it? And now it's happening to me, I should be quiet.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think so. When I've now got into my relationships as an adult or like my teens, when man's grabbing me up and doing whatever he's doing to me, I'm like, because that's what I've seen.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So I've seen my mum take a certain thing, and even when she's telling me, oh, you know, leave, because you set such a great example, didn't you? So I'm like, this is, you're allowing children to internalize this kind of behavior and say, this is okay for someone to treat me like this.
Yeah.
And it's okay for, and with that, you have an energy about you. Predators can pick that up
Anywhere.
And you internalize your emotions as well.
Yeah.
That's what they always tell me in therapy again. I'm so therapied right now. But they tell you, so obviously in childhood, if you're taught not to have negative emotions need to happen. That's positive. If you're taught to never say how you feel because you're in an abusive environment and things like that, you internalize everything emotionally, and now you don't know how to manage these negative emotions, and you come out in this mental health issue. And I just wanted to touch on as well what you said about episodes. I think people don't really see that side of mental illness. With a lot of mental illness, you go in and out of episodes where you go to rock bottom to being okay to rock bottom. And I think that's one of the things I find hard as well, because it's like start life, stop life, start life, stop life.
I think it's like the stigma, like this. There's such a big stigma, like especially in like our like cultures and stuff, like, and probably in like white culture as well. I feel like there's still a stigma in all different types of cultures, but you sit there and you think like, okay, like if my own aren't going to help me, then who am I meant to tell? I can't sit there and go tell mum and dad that I'm feeling like this and I'm upset or this has happened to me, because mum and dad are going to say to me, do you know what? I went through that and I was fine.
Get over it.
Get over it.
That's
yeah.
that was one of my worst things. Get over it. You're a strong black woman.
Yeah.
Get over it.
I think we just get taught to like cope. You don't get taught to deal with things. And then you kind of go through life just coping, and then something else happens and you have to cope with that. And you brush it under the carpet, and then another thing happens, and then you're just brushing it under. You're not actually dealing with the situation. Like, you're not sat there thinking, do you know what? I'm going to sort this out. This is what's happened. Let's sort the problem and let's move on. Did you struggle to tell someone you had mental health issues? Yes.
Yes.
100%. I think it's because for me, like, I've got a really strong personality. So where I said, like, thought I was so big and bad, 5 foot, thinking I'm big and bad, it was so hard for me to accept it and say to someone, I think there's something wrong. Yeah. Someone sitting there telling you, like, oh, it's not that deep. It is deep. And people need to start realising that. It could be anything. I could fall over and graze my knee. That might be something big to me. It might not be big to you, but that's my hurt. That's my upset. That's why I feel like it was really hard.
And that comes down to you as well, the people that you have around as well.
Yeah.
I found it really, really hard, but luckily, like, I have the bestest friends in the world. I was in uni and they noticed something was wrong, that my behaviour was off. And that's been the case every single time. When I went to hospital, all times my friends have been there. So I think it's so important to be able to have people around that know you so well they can see when something's wrong when you can't say yourself.
I agree with you to a certain extent, because I believe that people can only help you as much as their capacity allows them to help you. So if they don't understand this thing that you are dealing with, or this mental health or diagnosis that you're dealing with, they can only help you, as I said before, pray about it, or, get on with it. It's, it's nothing like that. You've been through worse things. All of these things can even potentially tip you. So to answer the question, I didn't have a problem talking about my mental health. Like, I want people to know this is what I'm going through. I think it was the aftermath of people not knowing how to deal with me was problematic for me. And because people couldn't deal with me as gently as I needed to be dealt with, I've kind of like remove them from that arena, because I was like, you're just going to make it worse, and I don't want that to affect the way I see you or our relationship. So therefore, I'm just going to keep you at arm's distance, because I know how hard it is to deal with this myself, and I'm barely dealing with it at all. Well, then at the time, so why would I then give it to somebody else to be like, here you go?
But that's such a big issue that's such a big issue with mental health, not wanting to burden people.
Yeah.
And that is something that really needs to change. I've said it before that, like, if anything, just call someone. They would want you to call them. And this whole thing with mental health, I've had it, we've all had it, where it's just like, I don't want someone else to have to see me like this. I don't want them to have to deal with it. But it's so important for us to be able to do that, to be able to be here.
Is there one specific memory that sticks out the most?
Okay, yeah, there's one memory that sticks out, and I look back and I'm just like, why did I not think this through? And so, like, as a doctor, I know the symptoms of depression, yet I was so not able to see those symptoms in myself. So I remember I was going into the kitchen, and then, like, this thought came up about, like, oh, what I could do with, like, the knives in the kitchen. And then I was just like, oh, that was a weird thought. And I just went on with my day. And that just, yeah, that sticks out to me as, I don't know why that didn't ring alarm bells. Yeah.
I guess mine is, I don't know, I got like really low into an episode this year, the beginning of the year. And I just remember just getting like just tablets and just being like, I can't do it. And I have OCD in my thinking. So I remember just being like, I'm gonna just, you know, take one. And then I'm like, I'd spoken to my friend and she was coming and I was like, no, it's okay, I'm just gonna take one. And then I'm just gonna take another one, and I did it in like my OCD thinking. And obviously, luckily, it didn't go the way that at that time I intended it to go. But I think that's something that stays with you and that you don't ever wanna get back to that place, and that's why you put in all the work. But the work's the hardest thing that you'll ever do.
I think people need to be educated, be willing to be educated, and willing to be open and not just be like, oh, it is, you know, someone's just making it up, they're doing it for attention. I promise you there's a reason for everyone's behaviour. Even if you disagree with something they've done, there's a reason why they've done it. And it's never really personal. It's always kind of like they're releasing from themselves.
There's even a reason why you might disagree with their behaviour or that
Exactly.
their behaviour makes you uncomfortable.
Exactly.
And that's why we should all be emotionally aware. It's not that you wait until you have a mental health issue to go to therapy.
Yeah.
That's like waiting until you get an illness to start eating healthily and start exercising. So why do we do the same with mental health?
What do you wish people understood about mental health problems?
It's not a choice. I can't just be better or get up and do exercise or do things to make myself better sometimes. So I think, yeah, that would be my thing. It's not a choice, because I don't think anyone would willingly put themselves through it.
It's like even Beyonce, okay, she can sing, but even Beyonce has a singing coach. Usain Bolt, he's probably an amazing runner by himself, but he has a running coach. So that's just running and singing, let alone living, going through experiences, living with your mind. You can get a coach that can help you with that and improve on what already may be great or not so great.
Just on the back of that, it's so right that obviously you need someone in your everyday life to just even, you don't know what emotions are sometimes. Some people grow up, they've got no idea what an emotion is, what's sadness, what's depression. So like you were saying about the spectrum, both you were saying, like anxiousness is there, and then nervousness is there, frustration is there. So it's like, where do I put that boulder? And I think that's something that also needs to be known by people, is that a label is not everything. A label is nothing to be scared of. Just because I'm told that I've got anxiety doesn't mean I'm panicking all the time. It, you know, doesn't mean you're going to see me panicking. I am going to be laughing and I'm going to be smiling, you know. But that's something that definitely I think people are a lot scared of. And it's almost like a definition. It's almost like how you want to be, how you're going to be defined. And it's like, no, you're so much more than that. You're not just that person who's sat in their room. You're not just that person who can't laugh, who can't smile. You're so much more than that.
You have to move away from that. You know, be open to wanting to help yourself. Be open to reading a book and recognizing there's more to life, just as opposed to the things that you've been taught already.
Yeah, there's more to life than surviving. There's also thriving.
Amen.
So.
Hey,
Amen.
preach.